King Lear is a tale for the quest for an increase in power and the tragedy that ensues when greed, jealousy, and envy are at play. It was written by William Shakespeare in 1606. While it is stamped by time, this is still a classic story that anyone can enjoy. The play opens with King Lear sitting down with his three daughters, Goneril the oldest, Regan the middle child, and Cordelia the youngest and King Lear's favorite. King Lear tells his daughters that he will split his kingdom into 3 parts for them, depending on how well they praise him. The first 2 sisters sing their praises, but Cordelia simply says words cannot describe her love for her father. At this, he flies into a rage and disowns her. The King of France, who was courting Cordelia, takes her to France with him without King Lear's permission. After Cordelia leaves, Goneril and Regan start undermining their father's authority in hopes of gaining more land. King Lear cannot accept the fact that his daughters are betraying him, and his mental capacity starts declining rapidly. He wanders off in a thunderstorm after a fight with Regan and Goneril, accompanied by his fool, the person charged with making King Lear laugh, and Kent, a loyal nobleman in disguise after being banished. Meanwhile, Edmund, the illegitimate child of the Earl of Gloucester, tricks his father into believing that Gloucester's legitimate son, Edgar, is planning to kill him, so Gloucester decides to kill Edgar first. Edmund warns Edgar that his father is going to try to kill him, and Edgar flees and disguises himself as a beggar named Poor Tom. Gloucester stays at the castle as the manhunt for Edgar continues, where Gloucester there realizes that King Lear's daughters have turned against him. Unfortunately, Regan and her husband find out that Gloucester is against them, accuse him of treason, blind him, and send him away to wander the countryside. He ends up having his disguised son Edgar lead him into the city of Dover, where King Lear has also landed. By this point in the story, Cordelia has learned of her father's whereabouts and sent an invasion to go and rescue him. The English troops, led by Edmund, who is still trying to gain power, arrive in Dover at the same time as Cordelia's troops defeat them and take King Lear and Cordelia captive. Edgar finds the castle where Edmund and his troops are, challenges Edmund to a duel, and Edmund is killed. Meanwhile, because of Edmund's betrayal and lies, Cordelia is needlessly killed in prison without King Lear's knowledge. Goneril poisons Regan because she is jealous of Regan and Edmund's attraction to each other and then kills herself. When King Lear arrives on scene and realizes that all 3 of his daughters are dead, he dies of grief and the play ends. This play is filled with betrayal, death, and action, as well as metaphors, personification, imagery, simile, and monologues. The first simile occurs within the first scene as King Lear was raging about Cordelia refusing to lavish praises on him. He referred to himself as a dragon and his wrath. It was interesting in this scene because it implied that should someone get in his way, he would severely hurt them. A few scenes later, Goneril delivered a monologue about how her father was a fool and her plan for her and Regan to gain more land, power, and authority. Then, as King Lear was stumbling through the storm, he yelled at the sky, daring it to blow winds and crack your cheeks, referring to the wind and rain as you sulphurous and thought-executing fires, and telling the storm to rumble thy bellyful, spit fire, and spout rain. He talked about the unkind elements having horrible pleasure as if the storm were a person, and there on purpose. King Lear seemed to think that even the weather was after him, furthering his descent into mental decline. The personification and imagery in that scene painted a very scary picture of people in the sky doing everything they could to destroy a person, with a madman daring them to do their worst. Later on in the performance, King Lear had stumbled across the camp where Edgar was living disguised as Poor Tom. King Lear cried out, "My own tears scald like molten lead," and it seemed as if he realized how his poor decisions as king had terribly affected people. These are only a few of the many uses of personification, imagery, simile, monologues, and metaphors used in this play. One prevalent theme throughout the show was the theme of women's oppression. Women's, or daughters in this case, had little to no authority and therefore are not allowed to offer criticisms, give opinions, or tell the truth about how they feel about a man's decision. For example, Cordelia would not father to gain land, and he completely disowned her. Goneril asked her father to forgive Cordelia, and King Lear flies into a blind fury and puts a curse on Goneril, swearing that she will forever be barren. Regan and Goneril also criticized their father for having all of his soldiers in the house, stating that they disrupt everything. At this, King Lear runs away into the thunderstorm, going crazy because of his daughter's wishes and desire for more authority in matters. As a result, all three daughters end up dying because of King Lear's responses to his daughter's requests. This theme is parallel with the short story Lady Cornelia, written by Michael de Cervantes. In this story, Lady Cornelia is kept secluded in a castle per her brother's orders in order to try and protect her. She ends up getting pregnant, and her brother decides to send her baby away immediately after birth. We see that theme of women's oppression in that story again, that men do whatever they want and the women do not always have a say in the matter. And although I know this oppression is historically accurate, it is not a theme that is prevalent in present-day America. I have not done a lot of reading or watching of Shakespeare, so I was excited to have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about him and some of his works. As I was researching the different options I had, King Lear stuck out to me. I had never heard of the story before, and unlike Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, or Macbeth, the idea of a king dividing up his land between his daughters and not sons sounded interesting and captured my attention. I also wanted to analyze a performance that not everyone would automatically know. I watched the 2008 film version of King Lear on Amazon Prime. Anthony Hopkins played King Lear, and Emma Thompson played Goneril. The cast was absolutely amazing, and I loved the twist and contrast between hearing Old English while a car was driving by with a modern-day military marching in the background. Overall, King Lear was a fantastic play to become more familiar with Shakespeare and his works. In fact, I might even be enticed to watch or read a few more of his plays. Thank you.